I'm Rachel Anderson, 35, and I never expected my sister's promotion party to change everything. When Heather introduced her boss Maxwell Cooper, I smiled politely despite years of being the family disappointment. During her toast, Heather gestured toward me with her champagne, laughing, "And here's Rachel, our family failure, still drawing pictures while I'm climbing the corporate ladder." The room tensed. Maxwell, however, only smiled and said, "Actually, Rachel doesn't need to explain herself to anyone. She's the most talented creative director I've interviewed in 20 years. If you're watching this and have ever been underestimated by family, you're not alone." I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you've experienced family drama like mine, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this moment completely transformed my relationship with my sister and revealed years of deception I never saw coming. To understand why Maxwell's words hit like a bomb, you need to know about Heather and me. We're only 3 years apart, but we might as well have been raised on different planets. From kindergarten, Heather was the golden child, straight-A student, class president, debate team captain. Meanwhile, I was the dreamer sketching in notebooks instead of solving equations. Our parents, Barbara and James Anderson, had a clear vision of success: prestigious college, corporate career, financial stability. Heather followed that blueprint perfectly. I challenged it at every turn. When Heather won the science fair in 7th grade, our parents threw a dinner party with extended family. When my artwork was selected for a citywide student exhibition that same year, they couldn't attend because of scheduling conflicts. It was actually just Heather's soccer practice. "Rachel, art is a nice hobby, but it's not a real career path," my father would say, while proudly displaying Heather's academic certificates in custom frames on the living room wall. My awards gathered dust in a drawer. By high school, the pattern was set in stone. Heather headed to Princeton with a partial scholarship and our parents' unwavering support. I chose the state university's renowned art program and had to work part-time to cover expenses my parents wouldn't. After graduation, Heather landed an entry-level position at Cooper Creative Solutions, a prestigious marketing firm where Maxwell Cooper was CEO. I scraped by with freelance design work, living in a tiny studio apartment while Heather bought her first condo with help from our parents' generous career establishment gift, something I was told wasn't in the budget when I graduated. "When are you going to get a real job with benefits, Rachel?" became the standard greeting at family gatherings. Meanwhile, Heather's promotions were celebrated with champagne and congratulatory cards. What nobody knew was that my freelance career had finally taken off in the past year. I'd secured contracts with several major clients, building a portfolio that was opening doors I'd only dreamed about before. 3 months ago, I'd applied for a creative director position at Cooper Creative Solutions, yes, the same company where my sister worked. Through a series of video interviews, I'd impressed the hiring panel, including Maxwell himself. The company's HR department had kept my application confidential at my request. I didn't want family politics complicating my professional opportunity. The party that night was my first time meeting Maxwell in person, though he clearly recognized me from our video calls. I'd almost declined the invitation to Heather's promotion celebration, knowing I'd face the usual barrage of questions about when I'd follow my sister's example. But curiosity about meeting Maxwell and a stubborn unwillingness to let my family think I was ashamed of my choices led me there anyway. What I didn't realize was that this ordinary family gathering would expose secrets Heather had been keeping for years and completely redefine our relationship in ways I could never have imagined. The silence following Maxwell's statement was deafening. My father's champagne glass froze halfway to his mouth. My mother's perpetual smile twitched at the corners. And Heather, confident, composed Heather, looked like she might be sick. "I'm sorry, my father recovered first. You've interviewed Rachel? For what position exactly?" Before Maxwell could answer, Heather grabbed his elbow. "Maxwell, can I show you the garden? Mom's roses are spectacular this time of year." Her voice was pitched higher than normal, words tumbling out too quickly. As she practically dragged him toward the patio doors, I caught the tension in Maxwell's shoulders. This wasn't just awkward, something was seriously wrong. What was that about? My mother Barbara sidled next to me, her voice low. "Have you been interviewing at Heather's company without telling us?" "I didn't tell anyone," I said, watching Heather's animated gestures through the glass doors. "It's a creative director position. I wanted to see if I could get it on my own merits. My mother's eyebrows shot up. Creative director? Isn't that senior leadership? The concept that I might be qualified for such a role seemed genuinely shocking to her. Yes, Mom, it's senior leadership. I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. 20 years of being underestimated will do that. Across the room, my father was interrogating my Uncle Frank about property values, pretending nothing uncomfortable had happened. My cousins huddled in a corner, occasionally glancing my way. No doubt tomorrow's family group chat would be explosive. Through the patio doors, Heather's conversation with Maxwell had escalated. Her hand movements were sharp, her face flushed. Maxwell maintained a professional demeanor, but his posture was rigid. Whatever they were discussing, it wasn't roses. When they finally returned inside, Heather made a beeline for the bar while Maxwell approached me. "Rachel, could I have a word? Privately?" His expression was unreadable, but his tone was serious. My mother hovered uncertainly. "We're about to serve cake for Heather's celebration. This will just take a moment, Mrs. Anderson," Maxwell assured her with practiced charm. "A quick business matter." As we stepped onto the patio, I noticed Heather watching us, her knuckles white around her glass. Whatever Maxwell wanted to discuss had her terrified. "I apologize for creating an awkward situation," Maxwell began once we were alone. "I had no idea your family wasn't aware of our discussions." "It's fine," I said. "I chose not to tell them until I knew whether I had the position." Maxwell nodded slowly. "About that, there's something else you should know, something concerning your sister." A chill ran through me despite the warm evening. "What about Heather?" Maxwell glanced back toward the house, his professional demeanor slipping for a moment. "This isn't just about the job offer anymore, Rachel. There are irregularities in Heather's work that you need to be aware of. Irregularities that directly involve you." "I'm stretching professional ethics by having this conversation," Maxwell said, leaning against the patio railing. "But given the circumstances, I believe you deserve to know." The garden lights cast shadows across his face, making it difficult to read his expression. Behind us, the party continued, a bubble of normalcy while my world was about to shift. The position we discussed, creative director for our digital division, comes with a salary of $150,000, plus performance bonuses. It would more than double what you're making now as a freelancer. My heart pounded. That kind of financial security had always seemed out of reach. But Maxwell's serious tone suggested this wasn't simply a job offer. "During your interview process, your portfolio caught everyone's attention, not just for its quality, but because parts of it seemed familiar to our team." I frowned. "Familiar how?" Maxwell took a deep breath. "Rachel, did you know Heather had access to your professional files?" "What?" "No, but even as I denied it, pieces began clicking into place. That's impossible. Our IT department confirmed it. When we started investigating why certain elements of your work matched campaigns Heather had presented as her own, we discovered she had accessed your portfolio submission through our internal system. Further digging revealed she's been monitoring your cloud storage for years, presumably through a shared family account." My mind reeled back to the Apple family plan my parents had insisted we all join. "For backups," they'd said. I'd never considered that my work files might be accessible to others. "Are you saying Heather stole my work?" The words felt surreal leaving my mouth. "Not everything," Maxwell clarified, "but enough. Key concepts, unique design elements, innovative approaches, she's been incorporating them into her presentations and taking credit for the past several years. It's how she secured her last 2 promotions." The garden seemed to tilt around me. Years of Heather's condescension about my career choices, while she secretly pilfered my ideas. The cosmic unfairness of it stole my breath. "We discovered it during the review of your portfolio. One of our senior designers recognized a distinctive technique you use, said it was identical to a campaign Heather had been praised for last year. When we started comparing timelines, we realized your freelance work predated Heather's presentations every time. Does she know you know?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "We launched an internal investigation 2 weeks ago. She was informed yesterday that we were reviewing the originality of her contributions." Maxwell's expression softened. "I suspect that's why she called you the family failure tonight. She's lashing out because her deception is unraveling." I remembered Heather's unusual insistence that I attend her celebration, the targeted barb during her toast. It wasn't just routine belittlement. It was deliberate undermining of my credibility before I could expose her. There was a project last year for Athletic Future, a sportswear company rebranding to appeal to younger demographics. Heather presented a concept that won us the account. When I saw the same distinctive elements in your portfolio, the gradient typography with environmental shadows, I whispered. It was a technique I'd developed for a small, sustainable clothing brand. I'd been particularly proud of that innovation. Exactly. Too unique to be coincidence, Maxwell straightened. Rachel, the job offer stands independently of this situation. Your talent is undeniable. But I felt you deserved to know what you'd be walking into. How many projects? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. We've identified 7 so far where elements were clearly appropriated from your work. There may be more. 7 projects, 7 instances of theft while Heather smiled across holiday dinner tables, asking condescendingly about my little design business. What happens to Heather now? That partly depends on you. As the injured party, you could pursue this legally, clear intellectual property theft. Or we handle it internally. Maxwell hesitated. I know she's your sister. Family complications are difficult. Through the patio doors, I could see Heather watching us. Her expression a mixture of anger and fear. My sister, my childhood tormentor and my parents' golden child, had built her success by stealing mine. I need to talk to her, I said, moving toward the door. Maxwell nodded. Whatever you decide, the creative director position is yours if you want it. Your work, your actual work, speaks for itself. As I stepped back into the house, the weight of Maxwell's revelations pressed on my shoulders. Heather saw me coming and slipped quickly upstairs. I followed, ready for a conversation that was 20 years overdue. I found Heather in our old bedroom, frantically texting someone. When the door clicked shut behind me, she jumped as if I'd fired a gun. Having an interesting conversation with Maxwell? Her attempt at casual disdain was undermined by the tremor in her voice. You stole my work, Heather. No preamble, no softening. The rawness of betrayal made subtlety impossible. That's ridiculous. She laughed, but her eyes darted to the door like she was calculating an escape route. Maxwell shouldn't discuss internal company matters at social events. He's been under a lot of stress lately. The Athletic Future campaign. My gradient typography with environmental shadows. I stepped closer. The exact technique I developed for sustainable steps last year. Funny how it ended up in your presentation. Her face paled, but she rallied. That's a common design trend. Just because you use something similar doesn't mean the Brightness Hotels campaign with the animated line drawings that transform into photographs? I created that effect for a freelance project 6 months before your presentation. I was shaking now, years of suppressed anger bubbling to the surface. The floating text visualization for Central Bank? My technique. The color transition animation for Midwest Air? Also mine. You're delusional, Heather hissed, but her confidence was cracking. You've always been jealous of my success. Now you're trying to sabotage me by making up these ridiculous accusations. I pulled out my phone and opened my cloud storage. Let's look at timestamps, shall we? Every file has a creation date. Every element you stole has a digital fingerprint showing I made it before you ever presented it. Something changed in Heather's expression then, the moment she realized denial wasn't working. Her shoulders slumped slightly, the perfect posture she always maintained finally faltering. You don't understand the pressure, she whispered, anger suddenly replaced with pleading. Everyone always expected me to be perfect. Mom, Dad, everyone at work. I couldn't risk failing. So you decided to make me fail instead? By stealing my work while mocking my career? I didn't steal everything. Tears welled in her eyes, but I'd seen Heather's strategic crying too many times to be moved. Just elements. When I was stuck. When deadlines were looming and I couldn't come up with anything good enough. How did you even access my files? She looked away. Remember when Dad set up the family cloud account? I noticed your portfolio was backing up there. I just looked. At first, it was just to see what you were doing. Then one day I had this impossible deadline, and nothing I created was working, and your designs were right there. The casual way she described her theft made my blood boil. Those designs represented hours, sometimes days, of my work. Work you belittled while simultaneously stealing. Rachel, please. Her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. Don't take this job. If you come to Cooper Creative now, everyone will know what happened. My career will be over. I stared at her in disbelief. You're unbelievable. After everything you've done, you're asking me to give up this opportunity to protect you? Think about Mom and Dad, she pleaded. This would destroy them. Our family would never be the same. Our family? I laughed bitterly. The one where you're the star and I'm the disappointment? That family? If you ever felt any love for me as your sister, don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare use familial love as a weapon after what you did. What's going on in here? Our mother's voice cut through the tension as she pushed open the door. Her gaze darted between us, instinctively sensing conflict. Heather, honey, are you crying? Rachel, what did you say to your sister? Even now, the assumption that I was at fault. Some patterns never change. Nothing, Mom. Heather quickly wiped her eyes. Just a misunderstanding about work. Well, come downstairs. People are asking for you, Heather. It's your celebration after all. Mom shot me a look that clearly said, don't ruin this for your sister. I stepped back, a lifetime of conditioning making me yield even now. We'll be down in a minute. When the door closed, Heather grabbed my arm. Rachel, please. I'm begging you. We can work something out. I gently removed her hand. You've been taking from me my entire life, Heather. My parents' attention, my accomplishments, and now my actual work. I'm done letting you win. It's not about winning, she hissed. It's always been about winning for you. I moved toward the door, and for once, you're not going to. I left her standing there, mascara streaking down her perfect face, and walked downstairs to rejoin a party that now felt like a theater of lies I'd been blind to for far too long. I'm sure so many of you watching can relate to that moment of confronting a family member who's wronged you. It's never easy, especially when the family dynamics are already complicated. Have you ever had to stand up to a sibling or relative who crossed a line? Let me know in the comments. Your experiences might help others dealing with similar situations. Driving home from the party, memories flooded back with new context. The rain matched my mood as windshield wipers kept time with my racing thoughts. I remembered my high school art exhibition when I was 17. My watercolor series had won the district prize, the first time a student from our school had ever received that recognition. The exhibition was scheduled the same weekend as Heather's regional debate tournament. There was never any question about where my parents would be. We're so sorry, Rachel, but you know how important this tournament is for Heather's college applications, my mother had explained, not quite meeting my eyes. Take pictures for us? I'd stood alone at the exhibition, watching other parents beam with pride beside their children. My art teacher, Miss Calloway, had squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Their loss, Rachel. This is exceptional work." When Heather won second place in her tournament, our parents took the entire family out for a celebration dinner. My district art prize wasn't mentioned. Then there was my college graduation. I'd finished with honors, even while working part-time throughout school. My parents attended, but spent most of the ceremony discussing Heather's exciting new job offer on the phone. During my graduation dinner, they presented me with a modest gift card while reminding me that the real world doesn't reward creativity like academia does. 3 months later, they helped Heather with the down payment on her first apartment. When I struggled to make rent on my studio, my father suggested I get a stable job like your sister. I'd never connected these dots so clearly before. It wasn't just that Heather was favored. It was that my achievements were actively diminished to maintain the family narrative that her path was superior to mine. The pattern continued into our adult lives. Last Thanksgiving, I mentioned a major freelance project I'd secured with a national retailer. My mother nodded politely before turning the conversation to Heather's company health insurance benefits. Later that same evening, I overheard Heather describing a branding concept to our cousin, a concept that I recognized as my own work for a local boutique. I'd brushed it off then, assuming she'd seen my portfolio online and was impressed enough to remember it. Now I understood she'd been studying my work, mining it for ideas she could claim as her own. As I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, I felt a strange mix of vindication and grief. The modest building reflected in my headlights was nothing like Heather's luxury high-rise, a disparity my parents often remarked upon. But I'd paid for everything myself, without stealing or manipulating others. My phone buzzed with my father's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, not ready for that conversation. The voicemail notification appeared moments later. "Rachel, it's Dad. Your mother and I are concerned about what happened tonight. Call us back so we can discuss this situation." Heather is very upset. Of course she was upset. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling. And of course my parents' primary concern was Heather's distress, not my betrayal. I climbed the stairs to my apartment, no doorman, no elevator, just 3 flights that I'd climbed day after day while building my career honestly. Inside, colorful canvases covered the walls. My work table was cluttered with sketches and digital tablets. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, earned through genuine creativity and hard work. My phone buzzed again. A text from my father. "We need to talk about this job offer. Think about what this would do to your sister's career before you make any rash decisions." Not a word about what Heather's theft had done to my career. Not a single question about how I felt being betrayed by my own sister. I set the phone down without responding and walked to my window. The city lights blinked in the distance, steady and unchanging. Unlike my life, which had just been turned upside down by a simple statement at a family party. Tomorrow I would meet with Maxwell at the company headquarters. Tomorrow I would decide exactly how to proceed. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of 20 years of family history, now viewed through a lens of clarity that was both liberating and devastating. Cooper Creative Solutions occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. The security guard checked my ID, gave me a visitor badge, and directed me to the executive elevator. As I rose to the 42nd floor, my stomach nodded with anticipation. Maxwell was waiting in the lobby, his expression warm but professional. "Thanks for coming in on such short notice, Rachel." "Thank you for being honest with me yesterday," I replied, following him through glass doors into a sleek reception area where the company logo, a stylized double C, gleamed on the wall. "I thought you might appreciate seeing the department you'd be leading before making any decisions." He led me down a corridor lined with award-winning campaign displays. I noticed with a pang that one of them featured my gradient typography technique. The creative department was a sprawling open space, punctuated by collaborative pods and private meeting rooms. Designers and copywriters worked at standing desks and gathered around digital displays. Energy pulsed through the space, exactly the creative environment I'd always dreamed of. "Your team would be 15 people," Maxwell explained, gesturing to a particularly vibrant corner: senior designers, junior creatives, copywriters, and digital specialists. "They're talented but need clear creative leadership." A woman with cropped silver hair approached us. "Rachel, this is Diane Lawrence, our HR director." "I've heard excellent things," Diane said, shaking my hand firmly. "Would you mind joining us in the conference room? There are some sensitive matters we should discuss." The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A corporate attorney named Jonathan was already seated at the table, legal pad open before him. "Rachel," Maxwell began once we were settled, "we're in an unusual situation. The job offer remains firm. We want you as our creative director. However, the situation with Heather complicates matters. Our investigation has confirmed what Maxwell shared yesterday," Diane continued. "Heather Anderson has incorporated elements of your work into company projects without attribution. From an HR perspective, this constitutes intellectual property theft and violation of multiple company policies." Jonathan cleared his throat. "The company has options for proceeding. We could pursue legal action for the intellectual property violation, which would likely result in termination and possible civil penalties for Heather. Alternatively, we could handle this as an internal disciplinary matter." "What would that look like?" I asked, my mouth dry. "Administrative leave during a formal review, followed by demotion or potential termination, depending on the findings," Diane explained. "But much depends on your wishes as the injured party." The weight of the decision pressed on me. Part of me wanted justice, wanted Heather to face consequences for years of theft and belittlement. Another part recoiled at being directly responsible for my sister's professional downfall, despite everything. This isn't just about Heather, Maxwell added quietly. We've identified instances where your work appeared in client materials without proper licensing or compensation. As a company, we have an obligation to address that. Diane nodded. We're prepared to offer appropriate back compensation for unauthorized use of your intellectual property, regardless of how we proceed with Heather's case. My mind raced. Back compensation could be substantial, enough to pay off my student loans or even make a down payment on a condo. But money wasn't really the point. Could I see examples of the work in question? I asked. Jonathan slid a tablet across the table. On the screen were side-by-side comparisons of my freelance projects and Heather's presentations. Seeing the evidence so clearly displayed made my stomach clench. It wasn't subtle inspiration, it was blatant theft. I want to be clear, I said finally. I'm accepting the creative director position regardless of how we handle the situation with Heather. Maxwell's expression relaxed slightly. I'm glad to hear that. As for Heather, I took a deep breath. I don't want to be directly involved in her disciplinary process. I trust the company to handle it appropriately, according to your policies. My only request is that proper attribution and compensation are arranged for past usage of my work. Diane nodded approvingly. That's a professional approach. We can certainly respect those boundaries. I would also like to request that Heather and I don't work directly together during any transition period. Given our history and this situation, I think that would be best for everyone. Already arranged, Maxwell confirmed. Heather is currently on administrative leave pending the investigation. If she returns, it would be to a different department. As the meeting concluded with discussion of salary details and start dates, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Triumph at finally achieving the professional recognition I deserved. Sadness at the family fallout that would inevitably follow. And a quiet determination to excel in this position through my own merit, something Heather had never fully done. When we stood to leave, Maxwell held back. Rachel, one more thing. The team is excited to meet you. Would you like to say hello before you go? I hesitated only briefly. Yes, I'd like that very much. As Maxwell introduced me to my future team members, I caught genuine enthusiasm in their greetings. One designer, a young woman with vibrant blue hair, whispered, "Your typography innovations are brilliant. I can't wait to learn from you directly." For the first time in my professional life, I was being valued for exactly who I was and what I created. No comparisons, no diminishment, no theft, just recognition of my talents on their own merits. Walking out of the building an hour later, I realized I was standing taller than I had in years. The weight of living in Heather's shadow was lifting, one corporate floor at a time. 3 days after accepting the position at Cooper Creative, I received a text from my mother. Family dinner tonight, 7 p.m. Important to discuss recent events. Dad and I expect you to be there. No congratulations on my new job. No questions about how I was feeling, just a summons to account for disrupting the family order. I arrived at my parents' suburban home exactly on time, steeling myself as I rang the doorbell. My father opened the door with a grim expression. "Your mother's in the dining room," he said by way of greeting. "Heather couldn't make it, says she has a migraine." Of course. Heather could avoid difficult conversations while I was expected to face the Inquisition. My mother had set the formal dining table, a clear sign this was serious business. A bottle of wine was already open, 2 glasses poured. "Rachel," she nodded as I entered. "Sit down. We need to talk about what's happening with Heather." I took my usual seat, the one with the wobbly leg that no one else would take. "Hello to you too, Mom. Yes, I'm doing well, thanks for asking." My father frowned as he took his place at the head of the table. "This isn't the time for attitude, Rachel. Your sister is devastated. She's been put on leave pending an investigation that could ruin her career." "An investigation into her stealing my work," I pointed out, "which she did knowingly and repeatedly for years. We understand there's been some confusion about creative ownership," my mother said carefully. "But surely there's a way to resolve this without destroying your sister's career." "Confusion?" I echoed. "There's no confusion. Heather accessed my cloud storage without permission and used my designs in her presentations. That's theft, Mom, plain and simple." My father leaned forward. "Rachel, you need to understand what you're doing here. Heather has built a life at that company, a reputation, a future. If you take this job and push forward with these accusations, they're not accusations, they're facts, proven by the company's investigation. The point is, my mother interjected, family should come first. Surely you can find another creative director position somewhere else. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. So, Heather steals from me for years, belittles my career choices, calls me a failure to my face, and I'm the one who should sacrifice my opportunity? You don't understand the pressure Heather's been under, my father said. She's not as naturally creative as you are. She had to work twice as hard to what? To steal my ideas effectively? I pushed back my chair. Do you even hear yourselves? A heavy silence fell over the table. My mother sipped her wine while my father stared at his untouched glass. There's something else you should know, I said finally. Heather's perfect image isn't what you think. According to the company investigation, she's been inflating her contributions for years. And financially, she's in trouble. My mother's head snapped up. What do you mean? That luxury apartment? Leased above her means. The designer clothes? Maxed credit cards? The European vacations she posts on Instagram? Mostly debt. My father shook his head. That can't be right. Heather is very responsible with money. Always has been. Maybe on the surface. But she's been living beyond her means to maintain the image of success she thought you wanted. The image you've always praised her for. My mother looked genuinely shaken. How do you know this? It came up during the company's investigation. They had to review her financial connections to certain accounts as part of the process. My parents exchanged troubled glances. The perfect daughter narrative was cracking before their eyes. The front door opened suddenly, and to my surprise, my Uncle Frank walked in. My father's younger brother had always been the family maverick, successful in business, but unconventional in approach. Sorry I'm late, he said, hanging his jacket on the coat rack. Traffic was horrible. My mother frowned. Frank? We didn't invite you tonight. This is a private family matter. Actually, I invited him, I admitted. Frank had always seen through the family dynamics more clearly than anyone. Frank pulled up a chair. I heard about what happened at the party, and about Heather stealing your work. He gave my parents a pointed look. I'm not surprised. You two have been enabling Heather and diminishing Rachel's achievements for as long as I can remember. That's not fair, my father protested. We've always supported both our daughters. Frank snorted. James, when Rachel won that district art prize in high school and you skipped it for Heather's debate tournament, that wasn't support. When you helped Heather with her apartment down payment but told Rachel to figure it out, that wasn't equal treatment. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We've always wanted what's best for both girls. No, I said gently. You've always wanted what you thought was best. You decided creative careers weren't valuable or stable, so you dismissed my path. You decided corporate success was the ultimate achievement, so you elevated Heather's choices. Frank nodded. And look where that's led. Heather cutting corners and stealing her sister's work because she couldn't handle the pressure of your expectations. My father looked genuinely lost. We never meant to. We thought we were guiding you both towards security and success. I know, I said, surprising myself with the lack of anger in my voice. But you need to understand that I'm taking this job. Not to hurt Heather, but because I've earned it. I'm not responsible for protecting her from the consequences of her actions anymore. My mother dabbed at her eyes. What happens now? To our family? That depends on all of you, I said. I'm willing to work on rebuilding relationships, but only if they're healthier than before. No more golden child and family failure. No more diminishing my path to elevate Heather's. Uncle Frank raised his water glass. To new beginnings then, and long overdue recognition. As we ate dinner in uneasy détente, I realized this was just the first step in a long journey of family reconstruction. The old patterns wouldn't disappear overnight. But for the first time in my adult life, I was being seen for who I actually was, not just as Heather's less successful sister. And that felt like victory enough for one evening. My first day as creative director at Cooper Creative Solutions arrived with equal parts excitement and anxiety. I'd chosen a professional but creative outfit, charcoal wide-leg pants, a structured blazer over a vibrant blue blouse, and my favorite handcrafted silver earrings from an artist friend. Maxwell met me in the lobby. Ready for day one? As ready as I'll ever be, I replied with more confidence than I felt. The creative team had gathered in the main conference room for my introduction. 15 faces looked up expectantly as I entered, some curious, others clearly relieved. Team, I'd like to officially introduce Rachel Anderson, our new creative director, Maxwell announced. Rachel brings exceptional talent and fresh perspective to our department. I know there have been some changes and uncertainties recently, but I'm confident this marks a positive new chapter for the team. A woman with ash blonde hair, Stephanie, the senior designer, spoke up. We're really glad you're here, Rachel. Your portfolio is amazing. The genuine welcome in her voice eased some of my tension. These weren't Heather's loyalists, they were creative professionals who recognized quality work. After the introduction, Maxwell and Diane pulled me aside for a brief update on the situation with Heather. The investigation confirmed 7 clear instances of appropriation, Diane explained, sliding a folder across the table. We've documented everything thoroughly. Heather has been officially informed of the findings and the resulting consequences. Which are? I asked. Demotion and transfer to our client services department, where she'll have no creative input, Maxwell said. It's that or resignation. She has until tomorrow to decide. I nodded, processing the information. Part of me had expected termination, but this solution would allow Heather to maintain some professional dignity while ensuring she couldn't continue stealing creative work. There's something else, Diane added. Our legal team has calculated appropriate compensation for the unauthorized use of your intellectual property and company materials. She handed me another document with a figure that made my eyes widen. This settlement includes both back compensation and licensing fees. The amount was substantial, enough to put a down payment on a modest condo or clear my student loans entirely. Thank you, I managed. This is more than fair. It's what you're legally entitled to, Maxwell corrected. We've also implemented new procedures to prevent similar situations in the future. All creative work must now have documented sources and attribution. My first week passed in a whirlwind of meetings, project reviews, and team building. I discovered that many team members had suspected something was off about Heather's sudden creative breakthroughs, but lacked the authority to question them. Your gradient typography technique was so distinctive, Stephanie confided during lunch. When Heather presented it as her own, several of us recognized it from your freelance portfolio online. But when we raised questions, she shut you down, I guessed. Stephanie nodded, said great minds think alike, implied we were jealous of her innovation. By Friday, I'd begun implementing changes to the creative process, more collaborative brainstorming, clearer attribution for ideas, and a supportive environment where team members could freely acknowledge inspiration sources. The legal department scheduled a meeting to discuss copyright registration for my distinctive techniques and designs, protection I'd never thought I needed until now. It's standard procedure for our creative leadership, the IP attorney explained. But in your case, particularly important given recent events. During my second week, I received an unexpected email from Heather. The subject line read simply, "My decision. Rachel, I've accepted the demotion and transfer. Not because I believe it's fair, but because I have few alternatives. I hope you're satisfied with the damage you've done to my career and our family." Heather. No apology, no acknowledgement of her actions, just blame, as if I were responsible for the consequences of her choices. I didn't respond. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, at least not yet. Later that week, an industry publication ran a small article about Cooper Creative's new leadership structure, mentioning my appointment and background. The piece highlighted my innovative approaches and distinctive style, with quotes from Maxwell about the company's commitment to original creative work and proper attribution. It was a subtle public acknowledgement of what had happened, framed positively as the company's dedication to creative integrity rather than as a scandal. Still, anyone in the industry reading between the lines would understand. My mother called after seeing the article online. "Rachel, this is wonderful news. Dad and I are very proud of you." Too little, too late? Perhaps, but it was something, a small step toward the recognition I'd craved for decades. As my first month as creative director drew to a close, the team launched a campaign for a major client, a campaign built on genuinely collaborative work with clear attribution for every element. When it won industry recognition, the entire team celebrated together, each contribution valued. Standing in my office, looking at the award certificate with all team members' names listed, I realized something important. Success didn't need to be built on someone else's failure. There was room for everyone to shine when credit was given where it was due. That night, I finally used part of my settlement to put a deposit on a small but charming condo, my first real property. As I signed the paperwork, I felt a sense of closure. The rewards of my creativity were finally coming back to me. 3 months into my role as creative director, the department had transformed. Our latest campaign had not only exceeded client expectations, but had also been shortlisted for 2 major industry awards. My team, now truly feeling like my team, worked cohesively, with open communication and clear attribution for creative contributions. I'd settled into my new condo, a bright corner unit with large windows perfect for my home studio. For the first time in my adult life, I felt professionally and personally grounded. Then came the text from Heather. "Can we meet?" "Just to talk. Coffee shop of your choice." I stared at my phone for a long time before responding. Part of me wanted to refuse, to maintain the distance that had developed since the confrontation. But another part recognized that unresolved family issues would always hang over me if I didn't at least hear what she had to say. We agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop downtown, halfway between our workplaces. I arrived early, choosing a table near the back with enough privacy for difficult conversation. Heather walked in right on time and I almost didn't recognize her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. Instead, she wore simple jeans, a casual sweater, and minimal makeup. She looked younger somehow, and less armored. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. No hug, no pretense of warmth, just cautious gratitude. "What did you want to discuss?" I kept my tone neutral. Heather took a deep breath. "First, I need to apologize. What I did was wrong. Accessing your files, using your work, taking credit. All of it. I've been in therapy since. Everything happened. It's helping me understand why I did what I did, but understanding doesn't excuse it." The directness surprised me. I'd expected deflection, minimization, maybe even accusation, not straightforward acknowledgement. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "It couldn't have been easy to say. It's actually harder to live with myself knowing what I did." She traced the rim of her coffee cup. "The thing is, Rachel, I've been competing with you my whole life, or thought I was competing. Mom and Dad set us up that way, though I didn't see it until recently." I nodded. The golden child versus the disappointment. "Except, you were never really a disappointment. You were just brave enough to follow your own path while I did exactly what our parents programmed me to do." Her voice cracked slightly. "And when I couldn't meet those expectations on my own merits, I took shortcuts, stole from you. Because in my twisted logic, you owed me for having the courage I lacked." The raw honesty of her words caught me off guard. This wasn't the poised, perfect Heather I'd grown up with. "Where are you working now?" I asked. "Smaller firm, entry-level position in client relations." She gave a self-deprecating smile. "Starting over at 38 is humbling, but it's honest work at least." We talked for nearly 2 hours. About our childhood, how differently we'd experienced the same events. About our parents' well-intentioned but damaging expectations. About the pressure Heather had placed on herself to maintain her golden child status at any cost. "I'd like to try creating my own designs," she admitted toward the end of our conversation. "Not professionally, just for myself. To see if I have any actual talent beneath all the pretense and theft." "You might," I said, surprising myself with my sincerity. "Creativity isn't a finite resource. You having it wouldn't diminish mine. Would you—" She hesitated. "Would you be willing to look at something I'm working on sometime? Give me honest feedback? No one's ever been really honest with me before." The request represented a profound role reversal, Heather asking for my guidance rather than condescension. It felt like the first authentic interaction we'd had as adults. "I could do that," I agreed. 2 weeks later, our parents invited us both to dinner. The tension was palpable as we gathered around the familiar dining table, but something had shifted in the family dynamic. My father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking, and some couples counseling, actually. We owe you both an apology." My mother nodded, eyes glistening. We thought we were helping by pushing you toward paths we believed would bring success. Instead, we created an unhealthy competition and failed to see your individual strengths. We're very proud of you, Rachel, my father added, looking directly at me. Your creativity and determination are remarkable. We should have recognized that long ago. And Heather, my mother turned to my sister. We're sorry for the pressure we put on you. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Decades of established patterns couldn't be undone in one dinner conversation. But it was a beginning, an acknowledgement of harm done and a commitment to build something healthier. As months passed, Maxwell's prediction proved correct. Cooper Creative's ethical handling of the situation earned industry respect rather than scandal. My team's innovative campaigns drew positive attention, and I was invited to speak at a major design conference about creative leadership. Heather and I established a cautious new relationship, not best friends, but no longer adversaries. She showed me her personal design projects, and I offered genuine guidance. She had talent, though different from mine, more structured and analytical. With practice and honesty, she was finding her own creative voice. One evening, Heather called unexpectedly. Remember how you mentioned that Community Arts Center needs volunteer instructors for their after-school program? She asked. I was thinking maybe we could co-teach a workshop on digital design for teenagers. Combine my organizational skills with your creative approach. The suggestion symbolized how far we'd come, from theft and competition to potential collaboration. I'd like that, I said, meaning it. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the window, relaxed, confident, no longer defined by family expectations or overshadowed by my sister. The journey from family failure to successful creative director hadn't been easy, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be. If my story has resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family dynamics and finding your authentic path. Have you ever had to confront a family member who undermined you? Or found yourself finally recognized after years of being underestimated? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found value in this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might be struggling with similar family challenges. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these complicated relationships is the most powerful support we can receive. Thank you for listening to my journey from family failure to finding my own success. Remember that your worth isn't determined by family labels. It's found in the authentic expression of your unique talents and the integrity with which you share them with the world.